So warm welcome to all of you. It's good to see you here, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome tonight's guest, the American Ambassador to Britain, the Court of St James, Mr. Robert Holmes Tuttle. We're particularly grateful to him for visiting us as part of what has been a pretty hectic schedule, taking in Dundee, Edinburgh, Glasgow, the Scottish borders and elsewhere. I'm not going to do a long introduction because time is of the essence, and there's a wealth of biographical information on the internet which people can easily find for themselves. Needless to say, however, he has arranged quite a wide range of experience. He's a distinguished businessman in terms of his work within the White House, where he was Director of Presidential Personnel and Special Assistant to the President during the Reagan presidency. His father was one of the people, I understand, who originally encouraged Ronald Reagan to run for the position of California governor. And so he does have a strong connection within the high circles of American politics, American business. Another of his areas of interest is art, and he's got quite a reputation for his work in California when it comes to art, in terms of being on the board of several museums. And so I did write a long presentation, but I'm not going to deliver it. I'm going to hand you straight over because we're short of time. It's nice to welcome Mr. Robert Holmes Tuttle. Please join me in welcome.
Thank you for the kind introduction. When President Bush called me about taking up the post of Ambassador to the Court of St. James, it was almost 3 years ago now. It was in January, and I was in Los Angeles, and it was 6:30 in the morning Los Angeles time, and I was sound asleep. And as the kind introduction said, I'd worked in the Reagan White House for 6 years, so it was not an entirely new experience, but it's still a little bit unusual to get a wake-up call in the morning from the President of the United States. But he did have my full attention as he asked me to become ambassador to the United Kingdom. And then as he outlined what he saw as a priority of public diplomacy. And he wanted my wife Maria and I to not only lead our embassy's efforts to advance America's interests with the government of the United Kingdom, but to also lead the embassy in its effort to the people of the United Kingdom. And to carry out that mission, Maria and I have taken 2 working trips outside of London almost every month for the last 2¼ years. We've been in every major population center in your country and doubled the outreach activities of our embassy staff. And in that, I've learned a great deal about the United Kingdom over that period. But more important, 3 issues have stood out time and time again as the concerns of the people of this country, and highlighted what I have come to believe are the 3 greatest challenges of the 21st century. And they are challenges we cannot deal with independently because they are not problems that can be confined within any nation's borders. They will have to be faced as countries and as transatlantic partners and as global citizens. And they are world poverty and social injustice, global environmental degradation, and the terrorism that stems from division and extremism. And the first challenge requires that we confront poverty and social injustice where it is most prevalent, because it is clear to me that our security and the security of our world will be determined by what we do in such places as Africa. Hunger and disease are the allies of oppression and tyranny, and instability and chaos are the most common export of rogue states. And that's just one of the reasons, besides the obvious humanitarian reasons, why President Bush has tripled assistance to Africa since the Clinton administration, and will double it again by the year 2012. It's also why the United States, in partnership with host countries, provided antiretroviral treatment for over 800,000 people suffering from HIV/AIDS, up from only 50,000 President has launched a massive $1.2 billion program to cut deaths by malaria in Africa by 50%. But as important as these initiatives are, we cannot be content with handouts or aid programs unless we are willing to bring these African countries and all developing countries into our international system of trade. Globalization can at times be an awkward word, and it means different things to different people when they talk about globalization, or the economy, or the national identity, or on the developing world. But one thing we all know is that globalization is here to stay. The world, of course, is more interconnected than it's ever been, and we must adjust our understanding of foreign and domestic politics to take in the reality that our shopping choices at home have the power to change working practices in those African countries. Engineers now graduating by the thousands across India have the power to affect job prospects in the Silicon Valley and, of course, in Scotland. It's no longer enough to worry about world poverty without also worrying about the system of world trade. But there's a growing tendency in many countries, including my own at times, to close themselves off from trade, to raise barriers, and to put tariffs on products and services. And I want to suggest that the best way out of poverty in the long run is a productive job and a productive economy, a stable climate for business, and a system of governance that protects intellectual property and investment. If we want to help the world's most vulnerable people, we must devise a consistent framework for them to join in the global marketplace. And the promotion of such activity and investment is where we often see the transatlantic relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States at its forward-thinking best. We have cooperated in the Doha trade negotiations and continue to have detailed discussions on trade agreements for the developing world, as well as countless other projects and initiatives. The United Kingdom and the United States have been working diligently because we know that if we do not ensure that developing countries have the capacity to become economically self-sufficient and politically self-sustaining, they become the breeding ground for injustice and terror. And this leads directly to what I see as the second challenge, and that's the environment. It is closely related to poverty and trade because economic development for the poor and the sustainability of our planet cannot be separated. The demand for energy is expected to rise by more than 50% by the year 2030. And of course, that's just a short time from now. In many ways, of course, that's good news for places like Scotland. But as we all know, our planet cannot sustain the growth that does not give due regard to its environmental consequences. And once upon a time, those who worried about climate change and those who worried about energy security might have been on the opposite sides of the debate. And they haven't come together in a happy ending yet. But as President Bush has argued for some time, there is a growing recognition that climate change and energy security are inextricably linked. So it's no longer possible to talk about the promotion of the welfare of the poor without